Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Am's Entitled Podcast. I'm Am, and if you haven't met me, hi, it's very nice to meet you. I basically have just recently started a podcast. It's more of a hobby for the time being, just because I'm somebody who likes to ramble a lot about my favorite things, and I know that there's definitely people out there that are like me that like to ramble. So, yeah, so in today's episode, it's episode 4. Wow, I've been doing this 4 episodes already. I find that so weird for some reason because if you would have asked me a month ago whether I would have carried on doing this or whether I would have done something like this, the answer would be a big fat no. So yeah, I'm getting there, making progress. I'm very happy so far with everything that I've put out there. And we're on episode 4 already. And today I'm just going to be reviewing the Percy Jackson series, episode 3, which is We Visit the Garden Gnome Emporium. And I just wanted to say a quick thing before I get into my actual review that I'm so sorry that the last 2 episodes have been late. I've been so much more busier than I thought I was going to be. I thought having a 3-week break from uni would actually help me out a little bit. I'd have more time to record and edit and then upload. But actually, I've had more jobs in the last 3 weeks than I've ever had in my entire life. And I wasn't feeling very well, like I mentioned last episode. I had glandular fever. So, yeah, I was just feeling really crap. And honestly, recording last week's episode was so much fun. And this series brings me, honestly, just so much joy, not only to my reader heart, but it is just such a good series. And I highly recommend it. And I'm going to stop rambling about this now. That's enough about me. I am going to get into my review of the episode, which is probably what people actually care about, not what I've been doing for the last 3 weeks. So, yeah, let's just get into it. So, the opening scene of episode 3 starts with Percy visiting the Oracle. And if you don't know who the Oracle is, it's basically she decides whether a quest is a quest or not. So, yeah, he the scene is quite interesting because Percy walks in like, oh, this is weird. Like it's a massive attic and the episode starts in the dark and she's just sat in the chair and it actually looks quite like creepy. Like it's quite disturbing. And I haven't seen the movies in a while, so I can't really remember how they did it in the movies. And to be honest, like I said, like if you've been listening to my podcast, you know for a fact I'm not the most keen on the movies. Like I don't think they were accurate representations of what I know Percy Jackson to be. So yeah. Anyway, so I'm not sure, I can't exactly remember how it's done in the film, but yeah. And Percy just makes a comment like, "Oh, you look like a Halloween decoration," and the green mist starts to come out of the Oracle's mouth, and it changes into the form of his stepfather, Gabe, somebody who he hates with a passion. Now, I think this scene is slightly different from the books because from what I can remember from the first book, I reread it a while ago, so I'm just trying to like nitpick my brain and try and remember. I think it turns into not just Gabe, but all of his friends, but they didn't really pull that thread in the show, so it just turns into Gabe. So it's just a slight change. And to be honest, I don't mind that change. I think that it's kind of like I kind of see why they've made that change because he hates Gabe so much. I think it's just better that it would just turned into him. Yeah, so that's how the episode sort of starts, and she basically gives him the prophecy. I don't know the prophecy off by heart. I'm so sorry. I should have written it down. I don't know why I didn't, but yeah. So basically, it tells him that the journey that he's going on to the underworld is a quest, and that's where the scene ends. And then it flashes to Percy choosing his companions for the quest. And they are all stood. So basically, Chiron has picked out the best people that he thinks are going to be the most beneficial for Percy on this quest. And they're all stood around in a circle. The shot is beautiful, by the way. The way it's been framed is stunning. But yeah, and Chiron just is giving a speech about the quest going to the underworld, and you know, Percy just interrupts him and says Annabeth, like he wants her to be part of the quest. Um, and Chiron sort of says, "Well, but do you not want to hear like more people? Do you not want to know other people?" And he says, "No, like this quest is going to be difficult, and whatever we need to retrieve has got to be retrieved." And he's saying that he sort of says something along the lines of, "Oh, if the quest required somebody to push me down a flight of stairs, I know that Annabeth would do it without hesitation." So yeah, and that I think that sort of lays like a foundation for non-book readers about Percabeth. You know, that is how their relationship is, and I think it's in Chalice of the Gods where she pushes him. I think she pushes him into a river or something in Chalice of the Gods. I can't remember. I haven't read that book for a while. But yeah, so it kind of s- brings the tone of their relationship to people who are new to this universe and to this series. And then it flashes to a scene with Grover, who is, I believe, from what I can remember from the episode, I took these notes over a week ago, so you're just gonna have to bear with me. I'm trying to imagine everything that's already happened. So, yeah, he's shoveling horse poo. It was his punishment from Mr. D, Dionysus, for telling Percy that his mother's actually alive and in the underworld. And Grover just basically asked him, "Oh, I'm sorry that I missed the ceremony. Like, who did you choose?" Just like out of curiosity, like any friend would, like, "Oh, who did you choose to go with you?" And he says that I chose you. And Grover just bursts out laughing. He's like, "Okay, yeah, that's funny, but who did you choose?" And he's like, "No, I chose you." And he very casually asks him, he says, "Why?" And he goes, "Because I trust you." And it is such like a big thing, and you can really tell. Excuse me, that's just my phone going off. Oh my God. I'm gonna put that on silent, otherwise I'm not gonna be able to concentrate on what I'm trying to say. So yeah, so he was like, I forgot what I was talking about now. Oh my God, yeah, the whole Grover situation. And he says, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I trust you," and whatever. And I think that just it just shows that they have such a good bond, and Walker and Arligan hit it out of the park with that scene. Like it was amazing. And it flashes back to the Oracle talking to him. And um the Oracle tells him, "You'll be betrayed by the one who calls you a friend, and you will fail to say what matters most in the end." I think those are the two lines of the prophecy. They might not be exact, but from what I can remember, those were the two lines. Yeah. And then it goes to Percy preparing for the quest, and Luke walks in while he's, sort of sorting everything out, packing for the trip. And this scene is very significant because it's where Luke gives him the wing shoes. So the wing shoes were a gift from his father. And if you don't know who Luke's father is, it's Hermes. And they're the wing shoes, I guess, that he used to use back in the day. I don't know. Anyway, and what I thought was really cool about that scene is, and what I really like about what they've done with the shoes is, the laces. So it's just a normal pair of sneakers, trainers, depending on what you call them from where you are in the world. Um, and the laces actually become the wings, which I think is such a cool detail. Like somebody's really put a lot of time and effort into that, and I think that's such an amazing detail that they put in there. So yeah, the laces sort of become the wings for the flying shoes. And then Percy basically says that he basically is trying to justify why he didn't pick Luke for this quest. And because Percy basically tells Luke that it's because in the previous episode, I think I might have talked about it in episode 2, I believe, on the podcast. It was like he always told Percy that he would be on Annabeth's side no matter what. So Percy knew, like, when if it came to saving his mother and Annabeth was against it, he knew for a fact that Luke would always take her side. That's why he didn't pick him. And yeah, and Luke is like, "Oh, you know what? It's okay. Like, I totally understand." And, Grover's a lot stronger than people give him credit for. And, that's how the scene sort of ends. And then, just as they're about to leave Camp Half-Blood, that's the scene by Thalia's tree. And Annabeth touches it as she's leaving. Obviously, if you don't know, Thalia was Annabeth's best friend. They came to Camp Half-Blood together. Thalia died trying to protect her, basically. And, you know, it was such a sweet moment because you really, even though like we haven't met Thalia in the series yet, like you can really feel like the close connection that Annabeth has to her, and that idea of sisterhood, and being willing to do anything for each other. And like it made me kind of think as I was watching it, like if Thalia was actually alive in the series, obviously she's not in the book, she's not either, not yet anyway. And it was really nice to see that, and Leah played that scene so well. Like she really did. She really did put that emotion. Do you know what it is about Leah? I think she does a lot without saying anything. Like just her face and her eyes, I think they just sort of say everything in that scene. And it's just awkward because Percy and Grover are watching her by the tree. And Percy says, "Oh, she's really going to miss that tree." So he obviously doesn't understand the significance behind the tree. He doesn't know that it's Thalia. And Grover basically tells him about what happened to Thalia the night that Luke, Annabeth, and her attempted to come to Camp Half-Blood. And he he's basically like, then Annabeth intervenes and she's like, "Oh, she was the bravest demigod that I ever knew. You know, she was a forbidden kid, but it doesn't matter to her." She said that she met a hero's fate, which she did. She died protecting her friends. And the Persassy comments were coming back, and he said she met a pinecone's fate. And honestly, like I, I was like, my jaw was hanging off in that scene because I was like, he did not just say that. Like, do you know how offended Annabeth was? And even Grover gives him like the dude, what? Look, it's like, how could you say that to somebody? But yeah, and then the scene sort of ends with them leaving. See. And then it moves on to the bus sequence, which is a scene from the books, which has been significantly changed. And I didn't realize how much until I started actually thinking about it and taking the notes for this episode. So Grover, it starts with Grover's like voiceover where he's talking about a quest being a sacred thing, and it's like talking to the gods themselves, basically. And it's ironic because I thought it was really ironic because they're just trapped on like a smelly bus with like a load of people, and Percy tells him that this cannot possibly be what sacred smells like. Like they can't be on a quest for the gods, stuck on a smelly bus with a load of travelers. Like that can't be what sacred is. And then he was like, he was trying to understand why they were on a bus and not on a plane. Like, obviously, they've only got like 10 days till the summer solstice. Like, why are they traveling on a bus that's going to take them even more time to get wherever it is that they need to be? And Grover basically tells him that he can't go through the skies because obviously he's a forbidden child and Zeus could just take a shot at him and kill him in the skies, basically. And Percy's like, well, yeah, nobody mentioned that to me, but yeah. And then it gets to a scene where the bus sort of parks up at like, just like a service station, you could call it. And Percy's like, Annabeth says, "Oh, I'm gonna leave, I'm gonna get some snacks and whatever." And he goes, "Oh, I'll come with you." And she says, "No." And he was like, "Oh, but why not?" Like, she was like, "Oh, but I want you to stay here because you're gonna be safe because obviously monsters can't smell you through that horrible stench. So that's where I want you to stay." And he says, I he goes, "Okay, I want to vote." And she said, "There is no voting, like there's no voting system." And he was like, "But why?" Like it's just this back and forth like banter, I want to say. It's not really an argument. It's more of her just being very like deadpan and being like, "No, you're staying here and I'm going to go and get what we need to do, what we need to get to carry on." And they're just having this whole lover spat is what I call it, a lover spat. And Annabeth sort of drags Grover into the conversation, like, "Oh, can you please explain it to your friend?" And he just starts clapping and starts singing the consensus song, which I can't watch that episode without that song getting stuck in my head. Um, and it's basically Grover's way of trying to solve the conflict. And Percy and Annabeth are just staring at him like, "What the hell are you doing?" And Leah's disinterested face honestly just gives me life. Like she's just standing there why am I here? Like why am I with these two? And the way Arian sings it is so cute. And do you know what? It was a perfect like humorous addition to the scene. I'm not sure if it's in the books. Like I can't remember for the life of me if it's in the books or not. But yeah, that was funny. And that song gets stuck in my head. "Oh, golly, the road's getting bumpy." That just, honestly, I watched that episode first thing in the morning to take the notes for this. And, like, it just got stuck in my head. Like, that song was just playing in my mind over and over again. It is a good, catchy number. And I really, really want a t-shirt with that, with those words imprinted on it. If anybody finds one, let me know. I think I've seen one on Etsy. I'm gonna have to order it because I just think it's so cute. Anyway, and I think this is a part of the scene where they sort of changed it from the books, which is when the Furies attack. So if you don't know what the Furies are, they're lieutenants of Hades. They're torturers sent by Hades, and Annabeth can basically feel their presence when she's walking around the service station. She can feel somebody watching them, and I think it's that whole idea of her just being 10 steps ahead of everybody else, like a little bit of a nod to what Luke said about her. She's always ahead of everybody else. She can always think further than everybody else. She can see beyond what everybody else can see. So it's that good idea. And that again, that's a trait of hers from the book that Leah very nicely brings to the equation, I think. And then Grover and Percy are just sat in the bus. Obviously, he lost the fight against Annabeth. I mean, who would win against her? I mean, she's amazing. But him and Grover are just discussing, monsters and what draws them to the demigods and that sort of stuff. And Grover basically tells him that it's different depending on the kind of monster that you're facing. And Percy just comes out with, so they smell fear. And he's like, no, that's bees. He was like, honestly, the comedic timing of that scene, I think, is so underrated. The way Arian just delivers that one line is hilarious. And I think I missed it, like, the first time I watched it, because I was so busy, like, focusing on everything else. But Arian's comedic timing in this series is just amazing. And then, obviously, it flashes a bit forward to where Annabeth comes back onto the bus and she can see Alecto. So Alecto is one of the Furies, one of the lieutenants of Hades, and she says that she's here to collect Percy. And Annabeth just can't understand why. Like she's like, oh, but why do you need him? Like I don't get it. And she says, oh, I don't question orders. I just bring them in quick and quiet, and my boss just deals with them. And I think what's so cool about what they've added in this scene, which I don't think is in the books, is Alecto actually offers to help her quest. She said, "Oh, I'll help you if you help me." And Annabeth just disappears out of the scene. If you know, I think that scene is particularly significant because even though like Annabeth doesn't directly say that she's going to give Percy, she doesn't want to give Percy up. It's that idea of loyalty, from the beginning. Like even though like at this point they're they're not strangers, they're sort of acquaintances, they're not friends as of yet, which is all about to change in this episode, by the way. But yeah, it's that idea of loyalty. She's kind of showing a bit of Percy's fatal flaw there. She doesn't want to switch up on him, which I think is very sweet. That Percabeth guy is just honestly my heart can't take it anymore. Like, and that's just in the first three episodes. Like, by the time we get to, hopefully, we get a season three and a four and a five and a two. I hope we get to do every single book because I'd love to see. Like, I get this excited now. Like, I can't imagine like how I'm gonna be by the time it gets to like book four and they're like they have their first kiss and stuff. Like, I'm gonna pass out. Like, I'm actually gonna have a heart attack because I just love them so much. Anyway, I think let's come back to the scene. Sorry, I went on a Percabeth tangent there. I think this has been the bit where it gets sort of different. I think in the book there's only no, there's three Furies in the book that come to attack them. And basically in the book, if you haven't read it, Percabeth, Annabeth is what I meant. Annabeth gives her invisibility cap to Percy so that he can sneak off the bus, and he sort of doesn't go off the bus and whatever, and it causes like this massive fight in the middle of the bus, and eventually they Percy, Annabeth, and Grover they get out onto the street, and the bus sort of blows up with all their stuff in it. So this scene is different because there's actually only two Furies that are attacking them, and instead of blowing up the whole bus, it's more of like Annabeth throws her dagger and they just jump out the window and they're on the run. So the scene is a bit different from the books, and I don't know how I feel about that necessarily because, well, I don't know. Maybe it makes more sense for the plot line for the series that they don't blow the bus up, but yeah, they just sort of break the window and jump out. Basically, that's how the scene ends. And to be honest, there is one good thing about the scene being like that. It's like it shows that whole Percy and Annabeth relationship again. They have a bit more of an interaction with each other, which I really appreciate. And Percy jumps out the window first, and the first thing he does is Annabeth, like, come on, like, like he doesn't want to leave her behind, sort of the thing, the same way like she wouldn't leave him behind, which I think is really cute. So then it moves on to them walking through the wilderness, um, in New Jersey, right? They're on a Seder path. So if you don't know what a Seder path is, it's basically a path through the wilderness, and it makes it more difficult for monsters and them to track the kids, basically. And then Percy basically says, "Oh, if we keep walking through the wilderness, like, when are we going to find a phone?" And she's like, "Why do we need a phone?" And he was like, "To call camp, just to ask for some help." And she goes, "No, we don't need any help. Like, we're absolutely fine." So yeah, a bit of the lover spat. I think. Do you know what I loved about this episode? Like, just talking about the episode as a whole. Like, there's a lot of Percy and Annabeth arguing, and I really enjoy that because they don't get along straight away. They're not the type where they fall in love at first sight and whatever. Like, it's like that about their relationship. Like, they have really obvious differences, and I think that's what makes their relationship so, like, endearing. At least to me, like, that's what makes their relationship so special. But yeah, and then she asks, basically, it's all getting a little bit heated, and Grover's trying to, like, change the subject, and she just very, like, is direct, and she just asks him, like, what are you so afraid of? Like, why are you so afraid of who you are? And he said that he isn't, but he hesitates, and Walker does that so well. Like, he's just like, no, like, I'm not afraid. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then he decides to bring up Athena, and that is the worst thing possible because if anybody who's read the books knows that Athena and Annabeth, their relationship is complicated, to say the least. Um, and it was just the wrong move. Like, the minute he said Athena, your mother, I was like, uh-oh. I was like, dude, you did not just pull the mother card on her. Like, you're about to get your head bitten off by saying that. But yeah. And then Annabeth just decides that she's going to keep dragging Grover into the conversation, and like Percy's like, why do you keep dragging him into the conversation? Like, this is between me and you. Like, why do you keep dragging him in? And then Percy says, "Oh no, he's not going to be on your side anyway. He's going to be on my side because he's my protector." And then Annabeth says, "Oh no, but he was my protector first." So basically, if you didn't know, Percy didn't know that Grover was Annabeth's satyr protector before she was his, and he was there that night that he found Thalia, Luke, and Annabeth and was trying to get them to camp as quickly as possible. And then basically he's like, why didn't you tell me to Grover? Like, why didn't you tell me that you were her satyr protector first? And he's like, whatever, just shush. And he could smell the hamburgers, which is like the same as sort of what happens in the book. But this scene is also really different. Like, the way they've structured it is slightly different. So flash forward to Auntie M's Garden Gnome Emporium. So basically, if you don't know, Auntie M is Medusa. And they basically are right outside and they get ambushed by Electo, who brings up the offer in front of Percy and Grover. And she's like, you should have accepted my offer when you had the chance. And Percy's like, offer? What offer is she talking about? Like, you didn't tell me about that. And she doesn't say anything. She just stands there like, oh, whatever. And then Medusa's introduction. I was so excited for Jessica. When I heard that Jessica was going to be Medusa, I was really excited because do you know what? I'm just going to bring the movies up really quickly again. As much as I didn't like the movies, the Medusa in the movies, that scene was so good. Like, I really enjoyed that scene. Like, that was one of my better points of the film, I could say. But the way Jessica plays Medusa, she's got this really, like, intense but also this softness to her. She's like the perfect balance, I think. And yeah, she just and I liked her entire, like, costume. The way she's got I'm gonna call it a veil, but I don't think that's what it's called. Like, so her eyes are sort of shielded, and she's got this lovely, like, nude long dress on, these heels and a necklace and a bright, like, red lip. Like, she looks very, like, put together, and she's got that really nice modern twist, which I really liked. And then what's really funny is, as like as she said, "Not today, friends. Not on my lawn," or like, not on my watch or something. And Percy and Percy's just standing there, and Grover and Annabeth are like shielding their eyes because they know for a fact that it's her. And Percy literally had no clue what was going on in that scene. And I think that's like that's such like a big thing like from the books. Like Percy like half the time doesn't have a clue what's going on. And I love that. Like I love that about his character. I love that he's so clueless. And you can see that definitely in this scene. And then she offers them lunch, so to basically come inside, and she basically reveals that she knows that Percy is the son of Poseidon. Now, I don't think that happens in the books. In the books, I think they sort of lie to her and say that, oh, I think they say that they're orphans from a traveling circus or something. So the scene is quite like different from the books. I kind of like that change. Like, I didn't really like that scene from the book, so I'm glad that they've sort of changed it. And then she introduces herself as Medusa, which doesn't happen in the books. In the books, it's Grover, I think, that finds out that they're in Medusa's lair or something. But yeah, so I like that she introduces herself. Um, and you know, he basically says that, oh, I think we should go inside, like I think we should trust her. And Grover and Annabeth are like, no, like what the hell, like she's a monster, like why would we do that? And he was like, oh no, but my mum used to tell her stories, and the main message was that she isn't what people think that she is, so I'm just gonna go in and you guys can do whatever you want. And Grover just follows behind him, and Annabeth just sort of stands there like, ugh, looks like I don't really have a choice. And then you know, that idea of him trusting his mother, at the minute he doesn't trust Annabeth just yet. Well, not yet anyway, because he thinks that their personal differences are always going to get in the way of them trusting each other, which like they do, but there's obviously more to it. And at the minute they're just kids, like they don't really have that emotional maturity just yet, you could say. And then there's just that ongoing like tension between them that um even when she comes in to Medusa's cafe. Is that what it is? A cafe? I don't know. I'm not necessarily sure. Anyway, and he was like, "Oh, thanks for coming." And she goes like, "Look, this isn't the same as it is for me, as it is for you, as it is for me." And obviously, if you don't know, um, Annabeth's mother, who's Athena, had actually turned Medusa into, well, cursed Medusa. And I think she was hesitant because she doesn't want to disappoint her mother, and she doesn't want her mother to be annoyed with her for siding with somebody who she considers an enemy. And what I loved about this scene is Walker and Aryan, they're sat at the table and they're eating, and Medusa's just sat there. She's literally isn't doing anything. Like she's just sat there, and like Percy says, "Oh, if you're not a monster, then what are you? Because there's a Fury outside who seems absolutely terrified of you." And she says, "Oh, I'm a survivor." And like Percy's is just like, huh? Like, what do you mean? And she basically talks about how she became why she was cursed, basically. And she said that Athena was absolutely everything to her. She loved her, she worshipped her, and whatever. And she never got anything from that love, not even a token to suggest that her love was appreciated, basically. And she was just she basically compares herself to Annabeth. She says, "Look, like I was loyal to your mother my entire life, and she cursed me." But actually, what if you don't know the whole thing behind it? So basically, it was Poseidon that told Medusa that he loved her. Medusa was Poseidon's girlfriend, and Athena caught them in one of her temples, and that's why she was angry at her, and that's why she punished her. She said that she'd embarrassed her, basically, and then it's sort of like Annabeth just sort of intervenes and says, "Oh, my mother." She's basically saying that her mother did the right thing because obviously she betrayed her love and whatever. But I think it highlights particularly that scene, like Annabeth's obsession with just wanting to be the most perfect daughter for her mother. Like even though like she doesn't know whether she's going to get anything out of it. Like all she wants in her life is to just make her mother proud. And I think like I like that they've drawn some sort of similarities between Medusa and Annabeth. Like they both are people that Athena cares about. Well, Medusa, Athena used to care about Medusa. I don't know if she does anymore. But yeah, and it's just it gets really tense because it turns into like this heated argument between Annabeth and Medusa, where she calls Medusa a liar, and she's like, my mother is just always like she's constantly defending her mother, and I think I don't know if she defends her for the right reason. Like as I was thinking about, like as I was taking the notes for this, and I thought about it, it's just like poor Annabeth, like she honestly, I don't even think she understands who her mother is. I think she's just blinded by being the pride of her offspring, and it's a lot of pressure, and I can definitely feel that in Leah's portrayal of Annabeth. Yeah, so Medusa basically just shoots out of the scene. She's like, "Oh, something's burning," and she says to Percy, like, "Would you mind giving me a hand?" Basically, and he just leaves the scene with her. And Annabeth looks really pissed off. And she just turns to Grover and she says, "Grover, get ready to run." So she already knows that there's something coming. Like she's like Luke said, she's always 10 steps ahead of everybody else. So yeah. And I think what I found really funny about that scene, just a little bit forward, when she was talking about Poseidon, um, you should just see like Walker's facial expressions in that scene. He looks like traumatized, and I could just like feel like the secondhand embarrassment that he must feel. Like she's talking about his dad, and obviously like yeah, it was just funny. I think there's a bit of adult humor in there a little bit. Yeah. And then there's the scene where Medusa and Percy are talking in the kitchen. And Medusa just basically says to him, like, look, she's gonna betray you. Like people like her, they always do, like they always do it, they're just out for themselves. And immediately like he just defends it, and he's like, I don't think that she's like that. So again, like he can see like the good in Annabeth. Like he knows for a fact that she wouldn't ever betray him, like even though like they're not necessarily friends at this point in time, he knows that she wouldn't switch up on him and he wouldn't switch up on her. And it also shows again his fatal flaw, which is that personal loyalty. That's a really key theme in his character. So I'm so glad that they've brought that into the show as well. And then he says that, why do you care? Like, why do you care like if she betrays me or whatever? And she said, your mom and I were like sisters in a way, targeted by the same monster. She calls his father a monster. Now, everything from the series, like even in the books, I don't think Sally Jackson has ever referred to Poseidon like that. She genuinely loved him, and I think he genuinely loved her too. And I think that's the point where Percy starts to like clock on that maybe she isn't who she says she is. Like she is a monster. Like there is something hiding there. And she offers to help Percy on save his mom from Hades if he switches up on Grover and Annabeth. And he just basically disappears out of the shot. And the scene ends with Medusa just taking the veil or headdress or whatever you want to call it off her head, in other words. And then it flashes forward to the Medusa attack scene where she's following the kids down into, I think it's a basement or a vault where she keeps all of the statues of the people that she's turned to stone, basically. And the snakes, honestly, the visual effects team have done an amazing job because they look absolutely terrifying. And even the detail of like Jessica's eyes like just glowing when she becomes Medusa, I thought that was really cool. And then the trio finds themselves in front of all the stone folks in the basement, and then Grover gets says that, "Oh, I'll put on the flying shoes and I'll distract her so you guys can kill her," basically. And then he says Maya, and he starts flying up into the air, and Annabeth and Gracie, Gracie, Percy. Oh my God, word vomit. Use words. Use words. Okay, so Annabeth and Percy are like, okay, yeah, we need another plan. Like that's not gonna work. And then I must say that Medusa is very, very good at gaslighting and manipulating people. Like the things that she says to Percy, I can't remember them exactly, but she was like, "Oh, you've chosen to be like your parents, blah blah blah, etc., etc." and Percy sort of uncaps Riptide. And another detail that I forgot to mention that I've just remembered as I'm looking at my notes is celestial bronze in the book actually glows. And I don't think that they ever did that in the movies, but Percy's sword in the series glows every single time he uses it, which I think is really cool. Yeah, and Annabeth basically places her invisibility. Why can't I talk today? Invisibility cap over Medusa, so she turns invisible, and Percy slices off her head. So a little flashback to the first episode. I talked about this in the first episode. I reviewed the show. I think it's episode two, episode one, where Percy and his mum were talking about Perseus, who was a Greek hero, and they were in front of a statue where Percy was holding up Medusa's head, and I think that was like a nice little um foreshadowing in the first episode, little flashback to the first episode in the third one. I liked the way they did that scene. I thought it was very, very clever. Anyway, God, I took a lot of notes on this episode. I got really excited. And then it basically, once they cut Medusa's head off, Annabeth and Percy have a bit of a heated discussion, let's say. And um, actually, no, that's not that bit. That's a bit later on. So basically, Percy's holding Annabeth's head. He wants to try and get rid of the Fury that's outside waiting for them. And and she basically says to him, "Oh, make sure it's facing the right way before you take the invisibility clap off, so you can kill it." And the way Leah watches Walker as he's walking away, like I think that's the first time that she started to develop feelings for him. At least, like for me, like in the series, I think that's the moment where she was starting to sort of fall for him a little bit. And it's not explicitly stated, and it's just my own personal opinion, but I think that's where she starts feeling this intense emotional connection to him, and she just doesn't understand why I don't think she understands why she cares about him, but she definitely does, like especially in that scene. I see it in her eyes, and I'm just like, yeah, this girl, she's got it bad. She's really got it bad for him, which is really cute. As a person but like I love seeing those small little like developments, you could say, because I know that in future seasons, hopefully Disney, please do not shelve this show because I'm going to be really upset. But I just can't wait to see what the future holds for them. And then they go back to Grover, and this scene, I really like this scene. It's more of, I think it more significant, significant, significant. Ugh, I've got real bad word vomit today. Like, honestly, I can't even think. Words are written right in front of me. I just can't say them. Anyway, so I think it kind of highlights on Grover's importance in the series and as a character, where he sees Uncle Ferdinand's statue. Now, if you don't know who Uncle Ferdinand is, um, he was a searcher for, so basically the god of the wild, which is Pan. He disappeared a long time ago. So the bravest satyrs sort of volunteered to become searchers for Pan to try and find him, basically. And his uncle was one of those searchers, and he only made it as far as Medusa's lair before he was turned to stone. So basically, he died. Which shows that he never got the chance to complete the quest. And Arian, he's got so much vulnerability in this scene, and it really, he had like tears in his eyes, and I was just honestly, my heart, I was like, oh, he's so cute. Like, I just want to give him a hug. And then, yeah, he's literally the heart of this story. Like, Grover is one of those characters that I just love from the books, and the way that Arian plays him, he's got this immense amount of vulnerability and softness and sweetness to him, which I absolutely love. And basically, Percy tries to like change the subject a little bit, and he's like, "Okay, so what do we do with Medusa's head?" And he was like, "We'll just bury it in the basement, like with Annabeth's invisibility cap." Now, obviously, if anybody doesn't know, that invisibility cap is so significant because it is the only connection that Annabeth has left with her mother, but she doesn't like showing that sort of emotional side of herself, so she just changes the subject, and she was like, "Oh, so can we talk about the bigger issue here?" And she basically confronts Percy like, um about his conversation with Medusa, like, oh, so like you could have saved your mother, like what's that supposed to mean? I don't Annabeth didn't know like at this point that Percy's mom was still alive and she was just with Hades. And then Percy was like, okay, so while we're talking about offers, like how come you didn't tell us about what Electo said, you know? and Grover intervenes, and he basically tells Percy about the significance of Annabeth's invisibility cap. And well, Percy's like, so then what are we supposed to do? And he goes, no, we're not talking about that right now. Like, we're talking about you two. And he sort of turns to Annabeth and he gives her a good telling off as well. Like, do you know, like, his mom is still alive. Like, how can you possibly say to him to, like, give up on the one person who's only ever loved him, the one person who he's going to have to choose between the fate of the world and her? How can you not be sympathetic towards that? And he comes back to Percy and he was like, oh, so she asked you a question, like, back in the woods, like, what are you so afraid of? And Percy's like, I don't know. And he was like, yeah, I think you do know. That's why you're fighting with both of us. Like, you don't want to talk to us. You don't want any of us to get close to you. And when Walker's acting in this scene, honestly, when he was like, oh, he tells them about what the Oracle said about him being betrayed by a friend and failing to say what matters most in the end. And he just tells them why he chose Annabeth. He says, I chose her because I couldn't imagine that we could ever be friends. And that is the biggest lie I have ever heard in my life. Like, you knew from the moment that Percy came to camp that he was infatuated by Annabeth. He could not possibly tell me that he didn't want to be friends. So that was the first big lie right there. And then he says that he chose Grover because he trusts him and he knew that no matter what happens, Grover would always be on his side no matter what. And then he tells them that he feels so alone. And honestly, like, my heart broke for him when I heard him say that. Like, he was literally getting choked up as he said it. And I was like, oh my God, like, this kid, like, his entire life has just changed. And, he doesn't know what he's doing. And it's an isolating feeling. Like, I feel his pain. He doesn't, there's nobody else who he can relate to, which I think it was so sweet, that moment. And this scene made me really happy because if you think about the books, like, people who have read the books, obviously if you haven't read the books, you're not going to know this, but in the books, Percy doesn't really talk about his vulnerability or like his feelings or his emotions to anyone. Like, in the book, he keeps them very, like, locked in his chest. So I'm glad that they've put that into the show because at the end of the day, he's just a kid. Like, the kids shouldn't be shielding their emotions from people, which I'm so happy that Rick has put that in, like, and the writers have put that into the script. Like, it's so important, especially for young boys. Like, I don't think enough importance is given to sharing emotions. Like, I know, like, with what I've seen with, like, my cousin brothers, they're, like, forced to just keep a straight face and, like, just take it, be strong. And you can't do that all the time. Like, you have to offload your feelings, otherwise you're gonna explode. So I'm so happy that they've put that in the show. So, like, younger boys that are watching the show are gonna feel like, yeah, you know what, it's okay to feel vulnerable. Like, it's okay to tell people that something's bothering you. Anyway, went on a whole therapist tangent then. But yeah, I liked that they've put that in there. And then Annabeth basically tells him that Electro offered to help her quest if she gave Percy up. And he said, so what did you say? And she said, I killed her sister. And it's that whole idea of them just, they would do anything for each other. And they're already doing it, like, now. And they don't even realize that they're doing it. And then Percy tells her that Medusa offered to help save his mom if he turned on Annabeth and Grover. And she says, what did you say? And he said, oh, I cut off the head. So that whole idea of, like, I think their relationship is based on loyalty and just willingness to do anything for each other. And I really liked those moments. They're just, my Percabeth heart is just so happy when I watch those scenes. Yeah. Anyway, and you know, yeah, again, his they're showing his fatal flaw again, which I like. I like that they show that because it is very important, not only to the series but in the hearts of the books. Like, he carries that fatal flaw with him throughout all the books, even in the Heroes of Olympus series, he carries that. So yeah, I'm glad that they've put that in there. And then Grover tells them that he says to Percy, look, we can promise each other that as long as the three of us are together, no, none of us are going to feel alone. Nobody's going to feel isolated because we're always going to be there for each other. And I think that scene is so sweet because, these are just three kids who have been thrown into this very adult situation and, they're forced to just survive. And it's difficult and it's not easy. And I think it's so nice that they show that unity and the chemistry between Walker, Arian, and Leah is just exactly how what I imagined would happen in the books. Like that friendship, that unity, that willingness to do anything for each other, like I think is so important to the books. So I'm happy that it's been very well incorporated into the series as well. And then it moves on to a bit more of a significant scene, which is a little bit more on the humorous side, which is where Percy decides to ship Medusa's head to Olympus. And it's very much against Grover and Annabeth's better judgment, let's say. And Grover tells him that the gods are not going to like that, and Annabeth says that they're going to see it as impertinent. And Percy just comes out with, "I am impertinent," and they're like, "Yeah, you might be, but we're not. Like we're well behaved. Like we respect the gods." And he basically says that that impertinent quote, I'm pretty sure, is from the book. Like I remember reading that in the book. Again, I'm really excited. Like once I finish reviewing all these episodes, and I finished Heroes of Olympus. I'm on Mark of Athena at the minute. I think I'm more than halfway through Mark of Athena. I'm just gonna finish reading House of Hades and the Blood of Olympus, and then I'm gonna go back and read the original five set of books. Heroes of Olympus is so much darker. Anyway, this podcast is not about Heroes of Olympus. I will talk about that another time. But yeah, and he basically puts the head in and attempts to shift it up. And then he's like, because they're having like a little bit of like a scrap moment, like a little bit of an argument between the three, he starts singing the consensus song. And Annabeth just looks like she's trying not so hard not to laugh and to smile. And Grover's just stood there rolling your eyes like, no, you can't do it how I can. And I agree, like the way Arian sang it the first time was so good. And then the episode sort of comes to a conclusion with Hermes, who is Luke's father, carrying the box that has Medusa's head, which says from to the gods from Percy Jackson, to the Empire State Building, to the 600th floor, which is where Olympus is, and then the theme music starts playing, and that's where the episode cuts off. So overall, I thought that the episode was really good. Like I really enjoyed. It was very different to the books. Like they had some similarities, but they've changed some things. Which honestly, I now I think about it, like I don't mind that. Obviously, when you're adapting a book, ultimately you're adapting it. The book is a lot of walking and talking, so that doesn't necessarily translate well on the screen. So they have to add things, change things. But I don't mind the changes that they've made, and I thought that Jessica as Medusa was really good. And I think they really start to show not only that Percabeth relationship really well, but also the friendship between Percy and Grover. And I thought that the episode was really good, and the consensus song is probably one of my favorite scenes in the whole series. And I'm happy that they've included that in the series. I thought it was a really good moment. And I'm glad that Arian got a little bit more screen time in this, like showing, because Grover's such an important part of Percy's life. Like, I'm so happy that they were able to give Arian a little bit more time to show the importance of his presence in the scenes. And yeah, like I said, Walker, Arian, and Leah just killed it. They were so good in that episode, and I honestly can't wait to review the next episode. Yeah, like I said, I'm currently rereading Heroes of Olympus. I'm on Mark of Athena at the minute. So yeah, it's very different. Like I forget how different it is to the first five books. It's a lot darker, a lot scarier. But I kind of, as an adult, like I enjoy it. I enjoyed it. I'm enjoying reading it. Yeah, I can't wait to get back to the original set of books because they were my entire childhood. But anyway, thank you so much for listening in. Again, I'm so sorry. That's two episodes that have gone up late, and I'm really, really sorry. I have been so busy, and I know that's not an excuse. It's not a good enough excuse anyway. But I am trying my best, and like I said, I'm really enjoying doing this. Like when I initially started, I didn't think I was going to enjoy this as much as I do, but I'm really having fun doing this, and even if there's only like five people that are listening in, like that makes me so happy. And again, like I said, like in my first episode where I sort of introduced myself and did an introduction to this podcast, is like the numbers don't necessarily matter to me. If I make one person laugh or smile or anything when they're listening to me rambling, that makes me so unbelievably happy. And you can tell I like to ramble because so far all my reviews of each episode have been I think over 35 minutes. Like, I just like to talk a lot. But yeah, there's just, these books are so special to me. And, I like pointing out things that maybe other people didn't notice. And, you know, yeah, I have like an Annabeth Chase necklace. I'm sat here in my Camp Half Blood t-shirt. So I think that kind of sums it up altogether that I'm a big fan. And I'm so happy that this Rick was given another chance by Disney to make this a series because with books, I think that it has to be a series. And as much as I love Harry Potter, like there are so many details that have had to be missed out over the years because obviously they only have like 2.5 hours to fill, and that gets full up quite easy when you've got lots of characters. So I'm so happy that they've turned this Percy Jackson thing into a series so that I can enjoy it and get excited. It does also mean that I have to wait 2 years for every season to come out, but I'm more than happy to wait because I'm really happy with what they've done with it so far. And I'm so excited to see what comes in season two because it's Sea of Monsters. And I'm looking forward to that Siren Bay scene, that Percabeth scene. It's already like noted in my mind. Like I'm looking forward to them doing that. So anyway, like I was saying, thank you so much for listening in. I really hope that you guys are enjoying these episodes. If anybody wants to have a chat, DM me on Instagram at Aamsuntitledpodcast, or you can email me if you want to be a little bit more anonymous. Amani, well, actually, I'm only what? I don't know if even anybody uses emails anymore, or am I just old? Like I keep emails because I think I do a lot of business stuff on emails. Like I like my emails are mostly for like my uni work and stuff. But yeah. So amsuntitledpodcast@gmail.com. Let me know what you think. I do check them regularly. Every 2, 3 days I do check emails. So and I look through my Instagram DMs as well. So, like I said, thank you so much for listening in. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. And in next week's episode, I'm going to be reviewing episode 4, which is I Plunged to My Death, which is at the St. Louis Arch, which I'm really excited about. So, yeah, it will hopefully go up next week by Friday, I want to say. But I'm not making any promises because at the minute, time's not really in my hands or on my side. Yeah, thank you so much for listening in. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I really look forward to you guys listening in next week. I love you guys. Mwah. Hugs to anybody who needs it, and yeah, just thanks again. Bye.